everybody, I'm here with a tutorial today on literally stretching your stamps. I'm going to be featuring the Make-A-Wish stamp set. It's brand new from Two Paper Divas. Here's a look at the card that we're going to make today, and I am literally going to stretch this stamp out so it is taller. There's a look at that stamp set. Again, it's brand new, and I will leave a link in the description box below if you want to go check it out. I've got a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of Canson watercolor paper here, and I'm just going to put that candle stamp from the stamp set on the very left side at the very top of the paper. Now I'm going to be using distress inks because I am going to do some no-line watercoloring, but again, that's not the main focus of this card. It is going to be making these stamps taller than they actually are. So for the wick or the flame, I'm just inking it up with 3 colors of distress ink, and now I'm taking peacock feathers and I'm just going to ink up the top portion and the middle section of that stamp, not the bottom part, and I'll stamp that down. So I'm going to clean off the stamp really well. You don't want any ink left over on this. Dry it off also. And I'm just going to use my finger to make sure it has no fuzz on it. And then I'm using my Misty to make this process a little bit easier for myself. But if you don't have one, you can certainly do this with an acrylic block also. Just make sure you look through and line it up. It's very easy with clear stamps. But I just moved my paper up in my Misty, and I'm just going to ink up the center of the stamp now. And if you get a little on the top or the bottom portion, it's okay, just wipe it off. And I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that back down, and you can see it lines up, not perfectly, however, because I am doing no-line watercoloring and I'm using distress ink, which is water-soluble ink, it's going to disappear. All those little imperfections will disappear. I went ahead and inked up the middle portion again after moving my paper up and stamped it down, and there you can see that I have stretched that stamp out so it now fills up the entire length of the card front that I'm going to make. And that's what I essentially wanted to do. When I got this stamp set, I knew that I wanted to use this to fill up an entire card front, but it wasn't tall enough. So I decided I wanted to stretch it out, and this is the way that I came up to do that. Now I am going to do 4 of these stamps, and just to make sure that they're spaced evenly, I went ahead and stamped the first one on the left that you've seen, and then I'm going to go ahead and move to the right so I get the placement of the center ones so they're all nice and evenly spaced. This just helps me space it out a little bit. So I went ahead and stamped that last one there, or the second one there, the same way I stamped that first one. And here you can see I went ahead and I've stamped. Next I went on to the purple, and now I'm finishing up with the pink candle there. And on the purple, I did ink up the top part. You can see it there. But again, because I'm going to watercolor this, that mistake is going to be covered and you won't even notice. Now I am going to do some no-line watercoloring here. I'm just using my palette on the right there, which is a piece of cardstock that I have laminated, and I'm squishing down my distress inks in the colors that I've used on the candles. So I'm just going to go ahead and set up my palette here. And again, I have stamped all of my stamps in the distress ink. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that when I go and I watercolor this, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to go carefully over the lines. And that's just going to make sure that any ink that I've stamped in is going to blend right in with the watercoloring. I'm also going to use the 3 distress inks on each of the flames there so it blends together and looks like a real flame. And this process takes just a little bit of time, so I'll turn on some music and let you watch. So I just finished up the watercoloring there, and I'm going to set this aside to air dry. If I can be patient enough, I like the look of air drying better than using my heat tool, but it's all about patience, and a lot of times I have none. But I'm going to go ahead and send this banner die through with some vellum. And this is the larger of the banner dies. And then I'm going to take this smaller banner die and I'm going to die cut from black cardstock. However, I didn't want my banner as long as the die cut itself, so I'm just going to do some partial die cutting. It's very simple, and this is part of the reason I won't get new cutting plates for my die cutting machine, because the newer ones have a tapered end on them, and it makes this technique a little bit more difficult. So if I can hold on to my old cutting plates, I'm going to do it as long as possible, because this technique is a lot simpler, in my opinion, with my old ones. But now I went ahead and I'm just going to send this all the way through now, since I've lined it up with my cutting plates. And here you can see when I pull this out, I've got my black banner and it is quite a bit smaller than my actual die cut. I also want to say that these die cuts, mine are from MFT, they are no longer available. However, Lawn Fawn has a new stamp set out that I've linked on my blog post. I would highly recommend those. I'm going to get those myself because I really like those banners, and they're quite long and nice. And as you can tell, you can always shorten your banners with partial die cutting. So in my opinion, the longer the better. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take this sentiment. It's Make-A-Wish. And I was going to tape off my exclamation point, but I forgot to remove the tape. So a lot of good that did. But I'll just use a brush after I sprinkled on some white embossing powder. I will just use a brush to knock off all that extra powder that I have on there. I'll go ahead and heat set this. And my banner was just a little bit short, but in the long run, you can't even tell. So it wasn't a big deal for me. I'll go ahead and heat set this in white. And then I'll clean up my mess and I will move on to assembling the card front. And this card was a little bit different for me. I normally don't do as many layers as I did here. However, it just kind of fell together. Have you ever had a card like that where it just kind of all comes together very nicely? This was one of those cards. So I've got my card front. I didn't cut it down at all, so this is going to go ahead and cover the entire front of an A2 size card base. It's a top folding white A2 card base. I'll go ahead and just line that up and press that down onto there, and it will cover again the entire thing. So no matting or anything for this one. And there you can see my nice tall candles all ready to go, and it fills up the entire front. No need for any extra stamping. So I went ahead and took some black thread, just plain black thread. That's all this is. And I went ahead and made a messy nest, and I'm just going to lay that over my card front. I'm not going to use any glue to hold this down because I'm going to put some foam on the back of that vellum panel there, and I've already attached my black banner to the front of it, and I'll just press that down, and that foam on the back of there will hold that string in place. There's no need for any extra adhesive at all. So I pressed that down, and then I wanted to add a little bling to this. So I took a mix of black sequins, and I believe these are the marshmallow sequins from Simon Says, and I'm just going to place a scattering of those with some glossy accents, and I'm using my Quick Sticks tool to help me stick those down also. This tool is one that I don't use a lot. However, when I need it, I am so glad I have it. It really saves me from getting glue all over my projects in these circumstances. But I'm just going to go ahead and stick these down again, glossy accents, and I'm just putting them from the very top right corner to the bottom left corner in kind of a falling motion. That finished off the card for today. It was a little bit different, but I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you'll give this technique a try too. I will leave you with a close-up of this card and some finished pictures. For more information and the complete supply list, you can visit my blog, craftingwhilecaffeinated.wordpress.com. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy crafting!